2 of Reimagine at 75. Great to see you all. We are, as you know, at the Taj, London, home of the India Global Forum as part of UK India Week. I'm Mark Barton.
I'm Edie Lush, and it's so great to be back here today. How is everyone today?
Good.
I didn't hear that, did you?
Good, yeah.
How is everyone? All right, that's what we got. As India marks and reflects on 75 years of independence, we are here to ask the questions, showcase the investments, and highlight collaborations, as well as seeking the solutions that are needed to achieve, in the words of Prime Minister Modi, a quantum leap in UK-India relations.
Now, how can that relationship, how can the UK-India relationship be reimagined beyond the blurred lines of history? And very good afternoon to our online audience, particularly in India. If you're on social, we'll be posting at IGF Updates. And if you want to share, be sure, do you like that? If you want to share, be sure. Let's do some share shores, everyone. Share, sure. Be sure to tag hashtag UK India Week.
Exactly. And yesterday we were joined by dozens of leaders from politics, business. We tackled the future of mobility. We looked at the future of trade. Our digital future crept in everywhere. And we finished up reimagining the future of Great Britain.
Now, we are spoiling you today. We have 3 UK Secretaries of State. We've got 2 Indian ministers as well. We're going to be discussing health, education, trade and investment, and how digital disruption affects all those areas.
Speaking of disruption, it doesn't end today. We've got Disrupting the Thames still on the calendar. That's India Global Forum's boat cruise. And if you would like to sign up, don't forget to let us know if you would like to join us.
Yeah, you may sail away now.
Oh, I'm going to hoist my jib.
Yeah, we'll see you a little bit later. Thanks, Edie. Coming up next, we have our opening interview, conversation chat with the UK Home Secretary. Secretary, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
How are you feeling?
Very good, actually. And having not been able to come earlier on in the week, I'm really pleased to be here.
How's the chatter? How was the talk this morning? How was the spiel, as they say?
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And I have to say, it's very personal for me to be here and a privilege as well. Mainly because I get to catch up with family members and friends too. So it's, you know, it's really good. But I think importantly, this week is very important. You know, India Global Forum, well established, very well established. But actually, it is the forum, in my view, that actually brings our 2 countries together, very much on the people's side. You know, this is the type of thing, I think, particularly because of the pandemic, we've just not been able to do as much of. We've not been able to bring the innovators, the investors, the people that actually, you know, enable the world to function effectively and our economies to thrive and grow, and also for those partnerships to develop, to come together. So this is really good. That
quantum leap which Prime Minister Modi talks about, how are you seeing progress in achieving this wonderful quantum leap in relations between the 2 countries?
So I think the quantum leap it's a great phrase. I think it stretches the imagination, and I think that's exactly what we should be doing. No one can say that, you know, India, the DNA of India and the DNA of the United Kingdom, you know, is deeply ambitious. And the quantum leap, I think, as a phrase, is a really strong analogy to use. But you've asked the key question, it's the how. You know, what would that materialize into? And I actually think we do have to frame a lot of our life still post-pandemic, because, you know, the United Kingdom is one of the few countries in the world that is fully open. You know, we're not wearing masks, we're not doing all the checks and things of that nature. We made a really bold move in terms of coming out of the pandemic and doing what we've done. And for the, you know, to illustrate quantum leap, I think you have to look at the strength of the bilateral relationship, how personal it is. And I'm a great believer in this. I mean, I'm well documented in my entire time in government. I'm very much bilateral rather than multilateral. Institutions serve a purpose. but, Prime Minister Modi, since, 2012 going forward, his time as Prime Minister, I think back in the various ministerial portfolios I've held, my visits to India, the engagement that I have, and I'm going to be very political now, our two parties are sister parties. That helps. That really does help. So that brings the quantum leap together. And both from Prime Minister Modi's side and obviously Boris Johnson's side, PM was in India this year as well. Yeah. He was in the home state, Gujarat. It matters. It absolutely matters because you have to have that implicit understanding. And linked to that, which I think is why, the relations are not just strong, the roots are really firm, but actually they are accelerating because of, I think, actually, if we look around this room right now, because of one key element, and that's the people-to-people ties. We are rooted together. Culturally, people, education, skills, our economy, we're vested. We are absolutely vested together.
We need more of it, though. This Living Bridge, you're part of the Living Bridge, which you're a wonderful example of it. But we spoke to many tech leaders, Home Secretary, in the last 24 hours. They want more skilled workers here. Will we get that? Is this FTA going to enable more skilled workers to move freely between the two countries?
So if I may, FTAs, free trade agreements, are absolutely there in terms of trade. We should, trade agreements are for trade purposes. We are very clear. I mean, I'm just going to spell this out pretty strongly right now. When it comes to people movements, migration, we're speaking about migration. They should not necessarily be linked to trade agreements, primarily because we have introduced a points-based immigration system, and that came into, it actually was established. We campaigned on it in the 2019 election. It was established by October 2020. We had the pandemic then, by the way, folks. And I had introduced a brand new electronic digital immigration system, literally within 9 months. If it had gone badly wrong, you would have, seen it being criticised and all the rest of it. That is up and running, it is working. The nationality that tops the list is India. So it is absolutely working, and it's high skill. It is all high skill. It is sponsored by employers. It's for people that are coming here to work, basically, across a range of sectors. And if I may, I should just give another illustration. That is just one element of it. The other element is healthcare. We actually have a very, very strong healthcare partnership. And we have a bespoke route, basically, for healthcare workers around the world. Now, you could argue either way, is that the right thing to do? But we have created that route. So India tops the list in terms of high skills. And there's no cap on this as well, by the way. There are no caps. So anything you hear about, and I know from my previous visits and my interviews with the Indian media, over several years in the past, it's always, well, you've got this restriction, that restriction. It is simply not true. The other point to make is that we're going to have the highest number of Indian students come to the UK towards the end of this summer for the new semester year in universities. So it is, India dominates literally our immigration system.
But India is calling for concessions on visas, on immigration quotas.
Yeah, there are no quotas. There are no quotas, that's the point. So, I mean, I think we should disaggregate this from the wider FTA because, quite frankly, I'm an old-fashioned labour market economist. FTAs are the territory of tariffs and, quotas and all the rest of it. It does not apply to immigration. The system we have in this country is legal migration, points-based system. And then, as Home Secretary, one of the big challenges we have, I've inherited it basically, is illegal migration issues, which are totally separate. But, high-skilled countries, the brightest and the best, we want high skills and high wages. We've spoken about that a lot. That is absolutely in the DNA of this government. We believe we have to drive skills. We are welcome to the world, always open to the world. And I think I've sat on this stage in previous years and I've spoken about, you go to some parts of the City of London, go to other parts of the country, you can close your eyes and you'll hear almost every single Indian dialect being spoken across certain sectors. That is a good thing, and we are incredibly welcoming, and we support that.
On the subject of illegal migration and migration in general, one of my wonderful co-hosts shared this quote with me earlier. I'm going to give Edie the credit. Migration's ancient, migration is unstoppable, migration is positive, but only if it's well managed. Would you concur that we we, the UK and the world, we're not managing migration very well?
So I think we have to recognise, we have to look at migration through a range of lenses. You know, I'm a former development secretary, so I'm afraid I've seen people movements through all sorts of dreadful events and, you know, in-country fighting, war, conflict, etc., etc. When I became Home Secretary, the calculation was there are approximately 80 million people on the move. UNHCR have said, literally in recent months now, there are about 100 million people on the move. That's displacement, it's global displacement. War, climate change, conflict, famine, you name it. I mean, the list goes on and on. The other factor is economic instability. So nation states not doing what they should be doing to support their own population, not investing in people. And that is a reality. We can't close our eyes and ears to that reality. We can't. So I have a very clear position in this country, in the United Kingdom. We have something called the New Plan for Immigration, which is our policy around dealing with not just illegal migration, but actually asylum, because the two are linked. You know, people that come to our country through some of the most appalling and dangerous routes, putting their lives at risk, they come and they automatically claim asylum. That is actually doing a massive disservice to our asylum system and also to people that genuinely should be claiming asylum, people fleeing war, conflict, etc., etc. But to your point and the quote that you've given, to manage flows of this nature, there are things that we as responsible countries and governments have to do. So creating safe and legal routes, for example, for people that are fleeing persecution, conflict. Afghanistan, we brought over 20,000 people last year in the space of about 6 weeks without the infrastructure to accommodate them and house them. Linked to that, Ukraine, 130,000 people have been given the permission to come to the United Kingdom. And then we've got a bespoke scheme for Afghanistan, literally another 20,000 people over a 4 or 5 year period. We also have to be able to cater for that and manage that, while also, I think, you know, the policy has to be absolutely fair to those that are fleeing persecution.
What about the Rwanda asylum policy? It's been called unethical, unworkable, a shambles, putting the UK...
They're quotes from the Labour Party, by the way.
They're quotes, many share them. A short-term stunt, even I gather Prince Charles calls it appalling. If the Supreme Court rules the policy unlawful, what's plan B?
No, so first of all, let me just put all of this into context. Yeah. I think it's really important. It's easy for actually opponents to just criticise a policy without a solution themselves. So my political opponents, they have no alternative. They would just have the open border policy. That is not acceptable to the British public. The British public are very supportive of this policy on Rwanda. What they don't like and what they find unethical are foreign courts actually ruling on UK domestic courts. UK domestic courts have not ruled our policy to be unethical or unlawful or unworkable. So let's just be very clear about that. And I'm going back to, it's actually the High Court, not the Supreme Court, to demonstrate the efficacy of the policy and the development of the policy. I think what is a scandal, actually, is how armchair critics would just basically condemn a country like Rwanda. You know, Rwanda has just hosted the Commonwealth Heads of State Summit, CHOGM. So it's a beautiful country. It's one of the fastest growing countries in Africa, double-digit growth before the pandemic. So the critics are basically saying that it's fine to have international summits and drink champagne and have lovely photo calls, but it's not okay to send people to be resettled. And Rwanda has a history, and I've seen it myself, by the way. So for the critics that say this is all sort of rushed together, this has been 2 years in the making. Our critics will, you know, go down those very lazy accusations. Rwanda has resettled 130,000 refugees. And they do it pretty well. They do it very, very well. Better, if I may say so, than many Western countries and Western European countries that do not give employment rights to refugees, that give them inadequate accommodation. So we are investing, and this is called, the partnership is actually a migration and economic development partnership, because we're investing in the systems in Rwanda, so processing, accommodation, but also investing in the individuals so that they can have economic livelihoods, skills, jobs, etc., etc. And that is a responsible partnership. And, you know, it's easy for the left and everyone to say, you're just removing people. UNHCR just don't like the policy because actually it has bigger repercussions for them.
What's the plan B then if it's ruled unlawful?
Well, it won't be ruled unlawful because, quite frankly, it's also gone through legislative processes in Parliament. So it is embedded in our National Anti-Borders Act, the work that we've done with the New Plan for Immigration. So it has been, you've got to remember, this is a government policy. So the courts can't automatically deem government policy that's linked to legislative changes that we're bringing in as unlawful when it's actually become an act of parliament. It's more about the delivery of the policy. And quite frankly, the courts can argue over that, but it'll be based on, yes, it'll be based on facts, that I think there are a number of claims that have been brought, accusations. It'll now be for the courts to hear the case and to effectively decide. If I can just give one example, when we were in the High Court about a month ago, I think it was less than a month ago, 3 weeks ago or so, one of the accusations that was levelled against the government was that we hadn't planned for malaria cases in Rwanda. Now, of course we have, but that can't halt the work of the government and the policy of the government. So I think this is very much, this is a very political comment, but this is a clear difference between my party in government and the opposition. The opposition's very blended now as well, because they would rather carry on with the status quo rather than actually putting forward workable solutions to the British public.
Talking about workings of the government, the mood of the government, how is the mood? A couple of by-election losses, 40% of Tory MPs don't stand behind the Prime Minister. Is he going to last to the next election at the end of 2024?
Well, I think first of all, you've asked about the mood. I've been a member of the Conservative Party, and you can all now say you don't believe what I'm about to say, for 32 years. So I know my party pretty well. I know our politics over here pretty well. I've been involved in by-elections myself in the 1990s when there was a Conservative government, where there are losses, midterm losses. It happens to every government. It absolutely happens to every government. And we should not just sort of start wringing our hands and sort of condemning ourselves at that particular point. This government was elected with a clear mandate, but also a plan for delivery. Now, I'll speak from my perspective. As Home Secretary, I'm delivering virtually every single manifesto commitment that I took to the British public, and I will do that. To govern is to choose. We make choices. We are here to serve our country and deliver for the public, no matter how hard it gets. That is those are the responsibilities that we have.
If Boris Johnson wasn't to survive until the next election, which
he's the leader of our party.
Yeah.
He will. He absolutely will.
Do you have ambitions to be Prime Minister one day?
He will be the Prime Minister of our country and the leader of the Conservative Party going into the next general election. I can guarantee
beyond that, would you one day have ambitions to be Prime Minister? Is it something you think about?
It's actually not something I think about, because I can tell you now, you can see we've only just touched on a tiny slither of my portfolio. I'm absolutely focused on my job and my responsibility to my country and the British people.
Thank you very much, Home Secretary. Wish we had more time, but big round of applause.
Thank you very much, sir.